right, so today we're going to be talking about the Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis, Missouri, also known as WashU. Our guest is Jake. He is about to start his third year there, and he has a really interesting background. He actually has just taken 4 months off to do research, which is one of the cool parts of this episode. Is the school there lets you kind of create 4 months ish of time during your clinical years to kind of mold what you want to do in terms of innovation, public health, a few other categories that Jake touches on. In addition to that, it's interesting that the clinical years there are 2.5 years, um, whereas at most medical schools they are 2 years. Also, he touches on the cheap tuition there, which is usually caused by a scholarship, and most students get scholarships. And he'll give more details on that. This is going to be a great episode. We'll bring on Jake in just a second.
So one thing that we wanted to touch on is just we've heard a lot about the tuition at WashU being reduced through scholarships for most students. And do you mind just sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know, I don't know specifically the experience all my classmates had. The few that I've talked to, though, said that WashU gave very generous financial aid, both merit-based and need-based. And that was also my experience, and we can touch on it a little more later. But essentially, I was accepted at a few schools I was really excited about. And on the wait list for WashU, it was my top school. I sent them a letter of intent saying, if I get in, I'll go. And they accepted me, and I agreed to go before knowing anything about finances, which was a little bit of a risk. But then I just said, hey, do you have any funds available? And they, gave me a substantial half tuition scholarship that I did not expect. So I think in general, and that's something that I love that I can touch on a little bit more later, is that the administration really does want to help you and they're advocating for you because, in that case, it wasn't like they were gaining or losing a student. It was, once you're accepted there, you become part of, I don't want to say a family, but pretty much that's pretty much the vibe.
That's awesome. Congrats. That's really exciting. And I've read that this kind of more started in 2019. They got a bunch of funding, and it sounds like that from what I've read, it's at least half students get full scholarships, and then most get at least a partial scholarship. So that's really exciting.
It's amazing.
Obviously you're at one of the top schools in the country, and we're really glad to have you on here. Do you want to just touch on your application process and anything that you would advise to people who are interviewing or that are tailoring their secondaries to WashU?
Yeah. For me, I applied to, I think, 35 schools, did like 30 secondaries, and went to a lot of interviews. And the one thing that I loved about WashU, it was one of my first interviews. I was really nervous because my mentor throughout undergrad had gone to WashU, and just, I really looked up to him and wanted to go there, kind of following in his footsteps. But I was amazed. To be totally honest, my WashU interview day, I loved it. And I'm sad if you guys don't get to come in person. And I think that's one of the biggest detriments of COVID. I'm so glad that, you can save money on flights and things, but coming in person, I love the community feel of WashU. And I feel like that's not just me, in our incoming survey, a lot of the people that chose WashU over other schools, it was because of this sense of community. Even on interview day, the medical student who took us around and toured was genuine, wanted to be there, wasn't, didn't sugarcoat things, but had a very positive view of the program and things. And everyone that I interacted with, as far as administration and deans, I really felt like they cared about me, even though I was just interviewing and I might not go there. And after I've been accepted, that has just been affirmed over and over again.
That's great. And that totally makes sense with the great faculty to student ratio you have there. And kind of getting more into just the St. Louis area, obviously some people are in St. Louis. One of the questions I had personally was just like, do you guys interact with St. Louis University, the medical school there?
Yeah, not much. I'm trying to think, maybe if you're doing like an interdisciplinary or inter-school kind of thing, but we are, we're a little bit west of SLU. No one's going to know exactly about St. Louis. We're a few miles away, and essentially, the if you go to SLU, you'll get a higher number of trauma cases, just because that is closer to the inner city. If you go to Wash U, what they say is you'll get all of the weird, interesting research cases, because it's a large magnet center. It's one of the biggest medical centers in the Midwest, definitely the largest, I would say, in the state. And so you get a lot of draw from rural Missouri and from other states.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that it was kind of the maybe like rare disease or rare case center. That makes sense. So tell us a little bit about St. Louis. What do you like about living there? Is the area around the school safe? Do most students live by the campus or?
Yeah, that's a great question. The area around the medical school is great. It's called, so the medical school, this is part of what I love. I grew up in New York next to Central Park, or pretty close, and the med school is right next to Forest Park. If you're coming to interview, I definitely recommend going if you have time, or you can even just look at it on Google Maps. Long story short, it's huge, it's beautiful, and it's really well kept. And that's just to the west of campus, literally across the street. I see it every day. You can see it from the hospital. And then the area around the medical school. So they have a few, St. Louis, interestingly enough, is very divided into neighborhoods. And the area around the medical campus or Central West End is, I'd say it's safe. That's where most of the students live. I live on campus actually. And the other place a lot of students will live is the Grove, which is a little bit south. Those neighborhoods are safe. There is a line, I'd say, a mile and a half north of the medical campus. And if you're going north of there, you just be careful because it's not as safe. But like everybody knows, and it's so interesting because in the course of maybe 1 or 2 blocks, it goes from very safe to, not so safe. But I would say in general, none of the students are worried about safety, because the area around WashU itself is great. And then you also have the downtown and county, all of which are safe areas as well. So it's mainly just, and this is sad, and this is something they talk about, is that St. Louis, sadly, the civil rights movement never made it to St. Louis in the way that it did in the South. So it never got that kind of systemic like breaking of segregation, and so you still have those lines that align with poverty, and in some cases they also sadly are still racial lines. And that's something that WashU acknowledges and that they're actively working with, is how can we help repair wounds in the community that have come about through decades of policies that mistreat people. So if you're interested in that, I would say WashU is a great place. They have the resources. It's actually a part of our curriculum now, and there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of work to be done.
That's really interesting. So getting into the content of kind of your schedule in your first 2 years that you've experienced, what did a typical week look like in your first year?
Yeah, mine look different than they're going to look moving forward, I think, just in the sense of online content versus in person, because our first year was 2020. So that was pretty interesting. Also, we were the first year of a new curriculum, the Gateway curriculum, which I think is amazing. It definitely has its hiccups and its growing pains, but overall, I have really enjoyed the new curriculum, and we'll touch on that later. But the first year and a half is divided into 7 quote unquote modules, and they're organ based. And so, one will be focusing on the heart and lungs, the next one on the kidneys and GI. It's been a minute, but you get the point. And what I love about that, and I think a lot more schools are doing this, is that you get the anatomy, the physiology, the pathophys, the clinical treatment. You get all of it wrapped up into one organ system that really, I think, helps you solidify the information. And I think their new curriculum also works really well with pass fail step 1, because there's much less of an emphasis on basic science that isn't relevant to medicine. If it's relevant to medicine, they'll teach you the pathways and things, but in general, the emphasis is a lot more on clinical care, which I've really enjoyed from early on. And so the typical day would be, you have maybe 5 hours of class a day. You have coaching once a week, all through the first year and a half. And your coaching group is 9 or 10 people. And you meet with a physician every week, the same physician for all 4 years. So it's a longitudinal group. And I'm really close to my coaching group. We've done stuff, outside of just coaching, gotten lunch and gotten together and things. And that's really nice because the point of coaching, sometimes their icebreakers are a little cheesy, but we love them. The point of coaching is just to have a support system, which is, I would say, one of the biggest pieces of advice I have for medical students is just, as you're preparing and as you go, foster relationships that will help you, when things get hard, or even when they're not hard. It's just, I feel like it's really beneficial as far as, physical, mental, emotional health. All of those things are benefited when you have relationships. And so, my coaching group is one of those groups where you go once a week and you can, be honest about what you like, what you don't like, the experience you're having. And that's been really great.
That's great. And this might be kind of hard to hone in on, but how many hours a day would you say that you're studying? And then also on top of that, are these lectures, you said they're about 5 hours a day. Are those mandatory or are they recorded? Like, can you watch them on 2 times speed? How do you kind of like manage your daily schedule?
Yeah, that's a great question. Some are required, some aren't, but the ones that are required are ones where it's, we have some team-based learning things where you'll get together with a team that's also the same for the first year and a half, work through some cases and then apply them, which I think is pretty beneficial. And then you'll have, if it's a required event, usually there's some sort of participation. Most of the lectures are not required and they're recorded. So I watched, I went back and forth between going in person and watching recorded. I didn't really see a difference. It's just preference, but you can watch them on double speed, triple speed, whatever you're feeling at the moment. And then as far as the breakdown goes, probably a fifth of the classes I would say are required and the rest are not required. That's, give or take.
Right.
And I don't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
about the breakdown of in-person versus Zoom right now.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's probably shifting more towards in person, but it sounds like they're
Mhm.
not mandatory, most of them. So you can watch them recorded,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
common with most med schools. But I think a lot of students care to know about that. So that's good to know. And then are people attending these lectures if they're not required to, or is it kind of just like a couple people there?
I think it's maybe a third of the class, or more, like 30 to 40 students, somewhere, 30-45% range, somewhere in there. But
That's interesting. Cool. So I mean, and with that, did you guys have like I'm imagining you had like in-person anatomy the first semester, like most med schools, or how did that work?
so we did in-person anatomy, but it was longitudinal as well, which I liked. And what you do is you'll have anatomy sessions throughout the module or throughout the block. And for the heart and lung, you'll go dissect the heart, look at all the vessels, dissect the lungs, look at all of those. And something else that I really like is, in addition to that gross anatomy, um, they also have prosection, which honestly, I'm a huge prosection fan. So some sessions, they'll just have you come and everything's already dissected. And I like that because I'm not very skilled at dissection. So it's really nice to be able to look at something, and just see all of the coronary arteries and everything already dissected.
Very interesting. Cool. Thanks, Jake. And is your class pass fail, or is there like a class rank? How is that organized?
Yeah, for the first year and a half, the classes pass fail, which I loved. Yeah, I guess for obvious reasons, it's really nice. No internal ranking, nothing from, so you have 3 phases. It's weird. Your first year and a half is quote unquote phase one. And that is your preclinical with some clinical experience thrown in that was actually extremely helpful. Phase two is a year in the hospital, and phase three is your last year and a half, where you have a lot of flexibility as far as pursuing. And that's something I'll touch on later as well. The curriculum gives you a lot of flexibility as far as pursuing research, public health, dual degrees, taking a year off for research, um, or essentially, education. If you're interested in med ed, there are a lot of opportunities there as well.
Very cool. And that's actually like a good transition into the next section. So I read a little bit about the new gateway curriculum that they have there. And
Mhm.
it seems like a lot of medical schools are transitioning this way, which a lot of people appreciate because they kind of want to just get into the clinical uh, education as soon as possible. So I know that you've kind of taken your own personalized route, and I think that would be cool for people to hear. So when do people typically finish the didactic years, and when do they start clinical years? And then what options do they have if they want to take like a non-traditional route like you've taken?
Yeah. So traditionally, if you start medical school September of 2020, like we did, a year and a half later, so January of 2022, you'll enter clerkships for a year, which is phase two, and you'll finish December of that year. Another, this is what Mark talked about. For me, I took 4 months off, and they have this option. If you're doing basic science research and you have a project that you want to do before phase two or before your clinical year, I took from January of 2022 to all the way to the end of April. So 2 days ago off to do research full time, which delays the end of clerkships a little bit, but I really enjoyed it. And I thought that was beneficial. And I guess one of the benefits of that would be, basic science takes longer to publish. If you're not sure if you want to take a year off and you still want to get that out before you apply for residency, it's a good option. Or if you're not sure if you want to do a dual degree, you have those 4 months to explore, do I want to do a dual degree? Do I want to switch to MD PhD? WashU is also very supportive of that if you're interested, kind of switching from MD to MD PhD. So.
That's really, really beneficial. And interestingly, would that delay like if you just took 4 months off to do research, would that delay your graduation at all?
No, I graduate the same time. The only difference is that's the beauty of the curriculum is it is that flexible. The only difference is my friends are going to get 4 months on the back end to do whatever they want as far as public health or research or med ed or those things, or innovation, and I take it up front.
That is awesome. That's so cool that people can kind of tailor what they want to do and have extra time off. And just one more question about kind of time off. I know a lot of med schools, you get like, between a month to 2 months off between your first and second year, and then like 2 weeks off for Christmas. What does that look like at WashU?
Yeah, for WashU, so that is the one thing you get a spring break for a week. You get 2 weeks off every Christmas, which is nice, including clerkships, which I think is really nice. I know some places will, or actually, I don't know, but I've heard that, some places they will just work you around the clock. But WashU, you get 2 weeks off every Christmas, and you only have a 2 week summer break as well. And then you get Thanksgiving off every year and all of the federal holidays. And something that I like though is that you have this 4 week thing called Explore after your first year, in the middle of your first year, and you get to choose a pathway. I kind of touched on it, but it's research, public health, innovation, or medical education. And you spend those 4 weeks in lectures or potentially working on a project. If it's innovation, you actually get put in a team and you get to develop a project. And the innovation lead, is very hands-on and has a lot of connections. Actually, like I emailed him out of the blue and I was like, "Hey, I'm interested in deep learning," and he's like, "I can connect you with someone at Google." And I was like, "No, that's amazing, right?" I haven't even met him. So I would say if you are interested in, innovation like entrepreneurship, WashU is a great place to go. They have a lot of connections. Also, I did the research track, which I really enjoyed. It just gives you a basis of statistical methods. And I guess the other reason I'm touching on this is it's connected to your summer break, and it's a lot lower stress. So you have those 4 weeks to, go to class maybe 3 hours a day, and then have a lot of flexibility as far as the rest of the time.
Yeah. And it's nice that they kind of provide an avenue of making your summer productive, but also not stressful. So you feel like you get a
Yeah.
break, but you can also get ahead in research or maybe pursue something else. So, and I failed to look this up, but does WashU have a combined MBA and MD program?
They do. Yep. They
Okay.
have a combined MD MBA. They have combined, you can get a master's in public health, a master's in scientific or clinical investigation. And I think for a lot of those, first of all, they encourage you to do it. And there are definitely resources there if you're interested. And second of all, tuition, scholarships, I think, are pretty common. I haven't applied myself, but I've heard, for the MBA, they're good at covering that and also for the other dual degrees.
Very cool. Very cool. So kind of like transitioning into the clinical years, obviously, Jake, you're kind of just starting off in the clinical years, but with what you've heard from upperclassmen or, upper level students, what
Mhm.
what do they say about the clinical years, or what have you gleaned in your experience in terms of like you've touched on kind of like the breakdown of some of the schedule, but kind of just in general, what your take on the clinical years, what you
Yeah,
think students would benefit of hearing?
I've talked to my friends, they've been through 4 months already. And I honestly am amazed. I expected to go in because what you hear from everyone is like clinical year is so rough, you never get sleep, it's just a year of your life that you give up to medicine and you become a better doctor because of it, which in some ways, like there are definitely going to be those times when you work like a 24-hour shift on surgery, but there's only one, which is awesome. You're only on call once for your whole 6-week surgery rotation, which is amazing. So I think they've done a great job of, first of all, taking student feedback because, on the surgery clerkship, they were originally having students work. So first of all, you can only work 6 out of 7 days in a week. So you always have a day off, no matter what the
Mhm.
service is. Second of all, they used to have students work like 4 out of the 6 weeks on surgery for 4 out of the 6 weekends, at least. So one day, but now they're only having them do 2. So you have 2 weekend days. The rest of your weekends are golden weekends, which for a surgery rotation is amazing. And I guess kind of taking a step back, the way that it works is they have 8 clerkships for 6 weeks each. And that's 48 weeks. The other 4 weeks of the year are your 2-week summer break and your 2-week Christmas break. And the nice thing is all of the clerkships start and end at the same time, and they all start with a 1-week didactic period and like hands-on learning, which is what I'm in the middle of right now. I think that's really great because they don't just throw you into neurology and be like, do a neuro exam. They teach it to you a week before you're supposed to do it. They let you practice it. I practiced today. They have simulations, like they have a ton of resources. We did a stroke simulation today with a mannequin whose eyes, would actually dilate and constrict based on where the lesion was in their brain. So just a lot of cool resources to make sure that when you go into clinic, you can hit the ground running. Also, I just think that the lifestyle balance, at least from what I've heard, is really good here on clinical year. I talked about surgery, OB-GYN. Also, you don't have to work. I I think you maybe have to work like 2 weekends, and then neuro is also 2 psych, or sorry, weekend days. Not even so if I say working a weekend, that just means either Saturday or Sunday, you get the other one off. Neuro, you only have to work 2 out of your 6 weeks. And then I think medicine and peds are more, but in general, it's pretty generous there. And then the last week, sorry, I forgot. So you do 1 week of didactic, 6 weeks in the clinic, and then 1 week afterwards. And that week is like a reflection week. So you take your shelf, you do your oral exams, and then you kind of consolidate what you've learned. So, once again, not the most intellectually difficult week. And I think that's kind of nice. The other thing is the grading system has changed. And the way that they do it is your shelf exam score is separate from your patient care score for the rotation. So all you have to do is pass your shelf. All you have to do is pass, which I think takes a lot of stress off of students as far as, role strain, managing, studying, and being in the hospital. And then it also allows you to focus more on the rotations that you're interested in, because something that's a big problem is grade inflation. Everybody gets honors, everyone's expected to. So the new curriculum is changing that to essentially say, we're going to show, passing for us means that you are more than capable of doing anything that can be required in X field. And then what you have is the opportunity to choose, you get a few things that you're distinguished in. So like if you want to do neuro, then, you can get distinction in neurology and, maybe internal medicine or something. And so that opportunity really lets residencies know what you're interested in, what your skill set is. So I think that's another benefit. And of course, it's the first year of putting it together. So the grading system itself is very much in the works, but the administration is very open to feedback and they really care about, the students. And so anyone who's coming here, I wouldn't worry about that at all.
That was very informational. Thank you so much.
Sorry, too much.
No, that was great. That actually gave me like a few questions, and I really like how they, have the 1 week introduction and the 1 week off to prepare for your shelf exam. And within that, is there a like honor or like a class rank for your grades?
Yeah. So what they switched it. It's essentially, I think of it as the same as honors. It's called distinction. So it's called something different. But the way that works is, beforehand, if you were applying for residency, it was expected that you would get honors in everything, right?
Right.
And I think that's how it is at most top medical schools, is there's a lot of grade inflation. But the problem is, residency directors kept saying, we don't know who's good at what because everybody has honors in everything. And so what they're doing now is like changing it so that you can get distinction in a few areas of your, in a few areas that you want to excel in. And the benefit of that is that, if you're like, for me, I'm not really interested in psychiatry. So on my psychiatry rotation, like I don't have to, all I have to do is learn what I think will be beneficial for my patients, and be a good team member and things like that. But I don't have to worry about getting distinction or anything because it's not, it's not expected. It's not going to help me. And so I think it's great as far as that goes.
Yeah, it sounds like they have it really honed in on like the way medicine is going in the future, and that's really nice. We have just a few more minutes here. Kind of wanted to talk about, and you've obviously hit on a lot of these points already, but just what you would add in terms of how the school helps you career plan in preparing for residency, building a CV in terms of like getting involved extracurricularly, and then preparing for boards. Can you shed light on that? Obviously, there's a lot to take down there, but just what you would share.
For sure. I would say, first of all, like grading, if you're pre-med, if you're just applying, don't even worry about it, because the biggest message that the WashU administration that they've shown, I feel like, is that they care about their students and they will help you get where you need to go. I emailed the dean of, what was it, like the residency dean, last week, set up a meeting on Monday and just, met with her. We just talked for a while, and then I asked her a few questions about, what would be the most beneficial path. And I think the great thing about WashU is, besides like the reputation, is that they will help you. Like the dean in charge of residency is amazing. She's very involved, and she'll help you take your strengths and your experiences and whatever you have and make that very attractive to residency programs, and also help you find those programs where your goals align really well. If you look at, I don't remember last year's match list exactly, but there were a lot of neurosurgeons and a lot of, like if you want to go into a specialty at WashU, you can go. They don't cap it, because I've seen some programs where like you have to apply for a specialty every year. WashU is not like that. Like for a competitive specialty, you could have one year. If no one's if not as many people are interested, 2 the next, and 5 the next. And they have the resources, they have, the people there to let you go into whatever you want. And then as far as opportunities, I feel like a kid in a candy shop here, because in undergrad, there are so many pre-meds, and they're all trying to get the same opportunities. And then you come to WashU. For example, I had like 3 research mentors that I was working with on 4 different projects while I was doing full-time research. And, some of the sessions they would have, they'll have sessions and you'll just hear from like 4 different people, and everyone at the end is like, if you're interested in working with me, just shoot me an email. So, the research is really what got me. I was amazed at how many opportunities they have: clinical, basic science, computational, whatever you want. But also there are so many clubs here. As far as like social involvement, if you're interested in working with community clinics, I know a lot of medical schools have that, but here is a great place to do that as well. And then being involved in policy making, whatever you want, they have a club. And if you're interested, you can be the leader of the club. Essentially, there are more than enough opportunities.
Yeah, no, that's great to know that there's so many opportunities. And I mean, I'm sure we could talk about that for days. Um, a couple quick just questions that are kind of miscellaneous for people that I've heard be important just when I interviewed for medical school. Is there mental health counseling resources for free at WashU?
There are. I haven't looked into it, but I've gotten a lot of emails about it. They just sent out an email a few weeks ago, class wide, saying like, here are the providers, here's how you contact them, here's how you can make an appointment. And so I know that the resources are there.
Fantastic. And then is there a tech package that you get in terms of like a laptop, an iPad, or like a take home ultrasound that they give you?
No, they do. So in the cost of attendance, they include a laptop. And so, I didn't get like a full ride or a full cost, but I'm assuming since that's included, if you get that, it might cover it. But also if you need to take out additional loans or whatever for that, then they will cover that. So
Okay, makes sense. So they don't like bundle the tuition and the laptop together.
no.
Okay, that makes sense. So you just buy your own.
Yeah.
Very cool. And are there intramurals?
There are. We actually just got the email about it. I think I don't remember what I signed up for. I think it was like pickleball and volleyball maybe. So, and flag football. So yeah, they're intramurals. It's my first year doing them. I'm excited to start. Yeah.
That's exciting. That's fun. Well, I think before we go, is there any other just general things that, I mean, without going to WashU, that you would want to share with applying or incoming students?
That's a great question. I think one thing would be, if you're accepted and you're considering different schools, I would just reach out to, the dean or the admissions dean. And if you're interested in something, ask to be connected with someone who does that. They'll be more than happy to connect you, because I don't think you can appreciate, the culture of the environment until you really meet someone. And so I would say, reach out, get connected, and, kind of see for yourself the kind of environment, because I love it. And if you have any questions, also feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you so much, Jake. This has been fantastic. You are a brilliant student, and you're going to be an amazing oncologist if that's the direction you for sure end up going. And we just really appreciate you coming on the show. So take care, man.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for your time.